4, 3, 2, 1, engage.
Oh, 7, and welcome back to the channel. Today I want to cover the Q&A for the Misc Expanse and discuss what it means, at least to me. So the Q&A is out, and I've had a quick read of it, but I wanted to do a video, as I mentioned in the previous one, about the Expanse to address what they say, so let's just get right into it. So what are the benefits of using a refinery ship compared to a station-based refinery? Their answer was the most obvious benefit is that you have the refinery on site, meaning you won't have to take long trips to a station all the time. Another benefit is that the on-ship refining process is planned to take less time than in a station, since you will have full control of the process. You'll also be unaffected by the refinery station's occupation level when it comes to being used by other players. Ultimately, we'd love players to come together to form industrial fleets with mining, refinery, salvage, transportation ships protected by fighters and gunships. Which does sound pretty cool, I'm not going to lie. It makes sense, the fact of it's obviously, it's going to take less time because obviously it's going to be a more active process, which we'll cover later on. So question 2, how long will refining take using the Expanse compared to a station-based refinery? Their answer was, the aim is for it to be a relatively fast, skill-based process. If you know the material you want to refine and you know how to properly process it, you should be much faster than the big refineries. Also, you'll be refining much smaller quantities, globally speaking, per job than a station-based refinery would. That makes sense, I guess. Question 3, will the Expanse have safe storage for volatile ore? For example, if I put raw quantanium into the Expanse, will the time to destruction halt? Which is actually a really good question, because this is actually going to answer whether or not it's going to refine quantanium. So no, the Expanse does not currently have safe material storage, so volatility will not be bypassed by storing it on board. However, it should halt when the refining process begins, so basically just like it is at a standard refinery. And yeah, I'm fine with that. I think that's kind of what we all expected if it was going to take quantanium anyway, so I don't see any issue there really. Next question, will there be a mini-game for refining like we have for other professions? If so, can you share any details? So this one's actually quite an interesting answer. So we don't call it a mini-game, since the mechanic will be a little more complex than that, but we have a general idea of what we'd like the player-driven refining process to look like. This isn't final and is subject to change, but currently the idea is. First, you'll put in the refinery sack from the delivery/mining ship into the tractor beam and attach it to the intake socket of your Expanse. Then, you'll analyze the materials. Based on the findings, you must decide which process you want to use. You'll pick either predefined method, with limited direct interaction, or the manual approach, which has you directly interacting with the material through interactions like grinding, melting, dissolving, and more. Our goal here is to allow you to decide how much effort you want to put in. So you could take the easy way and pick a well-known method, or you could come up with your own refining recipe. I really like the sound of that. I think that sounds pretty darn cool, actually. It's a whole air quotes mini-game. They don't like the term mini-game, but yeah. I like the sound of that. It sounds pretty cool. It sounds way more engaging than just take it in and do the easy way, which you can still do, but I'd be interested to see if the easy way gives you less yield than the other way, unless you completely bugger up your other way of doing it. Be interested to see what they come up with for that. So next question, will we be able to begin refining and then store the Expanse via ASOP terminal without interrupting the refining process? No. The refining process is an active profession, so you will have to pay attention to it. It isn't decided yet, but storing the ship could halt the refining process, reset it, or lead to materials being wasted. This, I think, is going to put some people off, because even if you take the easy way, you still can't dock your ship. You still can't log out. So, depending on the refining time, that could be really, really annoying. Like if you're refining something, I don't want to be there for 3 hours or whatever, refining, depending on which method it is. I can only imagine this isn't going to take anywhere near the amount of time this is going to take in a refinery. A standard station refinery. Because in those, you can get down to 15 minutes. I have to think it's going to be something like 15 minutes to half an hour, depending on the size of the cargo, etc. So what materials can the Expanse refine? The current aim is to have every raw, unrefined material be refinable, so all minerals, gases, and metals, including scrap. We'd also like to refine gases into fuel. Interesting. Gases into fuel, that sounds okay. Let's see what they go with. Let's see where they go with that one. I quite like the sound of something being done with that. I mean, we already know we're going to be able to refine quantanium into, quantum fuel, so it would make sense that they're looking for something else to do. Is it compatible with the Argo Mole, Grey Cat Rock, and the Drake Vulture? The Expanses plan to refine the vast majority of output from the vehicles above, so it shouldn't matter where the unrefined material comes from as long as the setup of the refinery matches the material's refining requirement. However, we're still looking into FPS mining and the Grey Cat Rock, as these methods output gems that might need to go through a different process than refining, but either way, they're planned to have a purpose in crafting. Okay, I mean, it's not really surprising about the rock. I didn't think it would even take anything from the rock, so I'm not really too bothered about that. Will refining require consumables, fuel, catalysts, reagents, etc.? Refining will likely require some use of power, catalysts, or other reagents. We plan to have your refinery be able to craft catalysts and reagents if you have the proper materials to hand. Okay, so they're really going into the whole profession thing. It's you'll be able to grind your own, essentially, catalysts and everything to kind of get you going as well. I like the sound of that. It's a full game loop. So yeah, why not bring it on? Essentially, this is a space MMO anyway, so it makes sense to have some MMO-style profession systems in there. Will the refineries require power from the ship to operate, thus increasing hydrogen fuel consumption when in use? Yes, the refinery will be dependent on the ship's power plant. This might even impact your ship's energy balance if you want to run high-energy processes in your reactor. So there's going to be a cost, energy-wise, for what you want to do. Not sure what I think of that yet, because it's not a very big ship, which means the hydrogen fuel is not going to last all that long, depending on what you're doing. Not sure on that one yet. I don't know what I think yet. Why does the Expanse have a single small shield where most ships of this size are better protected? Due to the energy-intensive nature of the refining process, the compromise was only having a single small shield to allow the ship to have full shielding while the refinery process is undertaken. However, the Expanse's current armor is above average for its size class, so the lack of secondary shield won't mean it's necessarily weak. I think that's really just a non-issue. I really don't see any issue with that at all. Could you explain in broad terms how the sack system, where your refined material is deposited, will work? You might already be familiar with the sacks from the Prospector and the Mole, where you have the storage units located at the side that will fill the ore as you mine. They expand as they're filled and can be detached once full. This can then be picked up by other ships and then their contents transferred to further processing. I don't really think that needed too much in the way of explanation, but... So next question, when the Expanse receives raw ore via a container, does it reuse the same container when delivering the refined materials? Or are the Expanse's 8 side saddlebags detachable? Yes, we plan to allow players to reuse the sacks that the raw materials were brought in, and refill them with the refined materials. The current process is described below, though could differ upon release. A Prospector delivers you a sack of unrefined materials, which you successfully attach to your Expanse's intake socket. You can either move the contents directly to your reactor or store it in one of the sacks on the side of the Expanse to be refined later. If you directly refine the material, you can move the material back to the original sack via the intake socket. However, you'll first have to rinse that sack to prevent the refined material from picking up impurities. You can also swap the sack at the intake socket for another before refining is complete. Be careful though, the intake socket has a very weak connection and it will not hold the sack in place during travel. I can already tell I'm going to lose one if I have this ship. The Expanse's saddlebags are planned to be detachable, so another ship could potentially pick them up. Potential mining piracy? Could be a thing here? I don't think that's really anything there. I mean, I like the idea of cleaning out the bags so you don't have any impurities. That's quite cool, depending on how they want to do it. Other than that, I don't think there's anything there that we hadn't really expected too much. What is the total cargo capacity for refined and needing to be refined material? Can it process 64 SCU worth of ore, but also have an additional 64 SCU in its saddlebags already refined? Like the Prospector and Mole, the Expanse utilizes the same folding sack design that allows a second set of pods to be stored on board in a compressed state. By default, there are 8 pods expanded, giving 64 SCU of capacity, and 8 pods compressed above them, given an additional 64 SCU of capacity once the initial 8 pods are detached. This allows the Expanse to stay in place and offload the initial set of pods to a nearby cargo ship to continue refining a second batch. That doesn't really answer the question as to whether you can start processing 64 SCU while you've got saddlebags attached and already filled. I'm assuming you can, but when the refining process finishes, nothing will happen with it. It'll just stay in the reactor. But I'm not sure they've answered this effectively enough. But it's pretty much what I would imagine. If your bags are full, you can't move anything from the reactor. So, yeah. Is the Expanse able to hold raw ore in waiting beyond the 6 jobs it can run at once? If so, will it automatically start new jobs in waiting without input from the player? We plan to allow you to store some amount of material directly in the reactor or in the attached sacks. However, it will not be refined until you actively start the process. It's a system being planned to allow players to charge for ore processing, like when refueling from another player's Starfarer. Yes, we plan to have a selling/purchasing system where the players are able to sell their unrefined material to the Expanse, which will then be refined and sold on. It will also allow you to add a fee for refining. I don't think they needed to add this. I think the players could have done this themselves. Like, I know World of Warcraft is just putting this into their next expansion, but for years now, players have just done their trade themselves. I don't think they need to implement a selling and purchasing system when if you come up and I can remove off, like if you give me the bag and I can take it through tractor beam, if you've released it, we've already come to a deal. So I don't really see the need for this system. I think the players could do this themselves. The brochure illustration shows pod loading in 0G via tractor beam. It's not very well worded. The brochure illustration shows a pod loading in 0G via tractor beam. Will this also work on a planet where gravity is a factor? That is the current plan, yes. A very short, nondescript answer for that. How is the gravity going to affect it? Will the tractor beam be able to hold it? Do you have to fight the bag when you're taking it across? I would have liked a different answer for that. So just to end up, what do I think of this? I don't think there's anything here that we hadn't really expected. You're not going to be able to use this ship on your own. If you have a prospector and you also have the Expanse, you're not going to be able to transfer the bags from the prospector to the Expanse. So it's not a single player ship. It's going to require you to be playing with people. I like the idea of a game loop and the refining mini game. I know they avoided that wording, but the refining mini game sounds quite cool. I like the idea of it, depending how they implement it, but that's still way down the line. I would have liked some form of indication when they expect that to go live, but they haven't given that. So, but overall, I think they've answered enough questions there that people are going to be happy, I think. We know it can now refine Quantanium. That's cool. We know that you'll be able to trade with other players. That's cool. We know that you can't use this as a single player. Expected. Not cool, but expected. So, yeah, I think they've done all right with the Q&A. I think the ship will be really good, as I said before, for orgs who want to go mining all the time, or someone who just wants to sit there playing the refining minigame. I think that'll be good as well. But there we have it. There's the Q&A. What did you think about it? Let me know in the comments below. So until next time, you fine people, I have been Just Dave, reminding you all to be good. And if you can't be good, be dangerous.